I tried ending my affair quietly, but my loving husband walked in on what was meant to be my final meeting with my affair partner. Every night, in the quiet of my house, I tell myself I'm selfish. My kids are no longer here, and my ex-husband has every reason to despise me. My immediate family is shattered, and I've never stopped loathing myself for what I did. This selfish act happened in 2015 when I was 39 years old. I confess, I took my ex-husband for granted. He used to call me beautiful every day, always sought closeness, cared for me, and treated me as his equal. Not like royalty, but as a partner. We were married for 20 years, high school sweethearts, and each other's only. My family adored him. He even supported my brother through tough times and was the person everyone turned to for help, a genuinely good man. Over the years, I gave him 4 incredible children, 2 strong boys, now 18 and 16, and twin girls, now 13. I gained weight and struggled with self-consciousness, yet he never stopped telling me I was beautiful. Arguments between us were rare, and when they did happen, they were mostly about intimacy. I wasn't always in the mood, and he wanted more. At 39, on my birthday, everything changed. After spending a year doing yoga and Pilates at the gym, I went from 180 to 135 pounds, a remarkable transformation for someone who had always been chubby. My husband joined me at the gym, though less frequently, and trimmed down from 260 to 225 pounds, sculpting his body. Despite his growing affection and efforts, I still wasn't in the mood. We tried romantic dinners, dancing, walks, and he helped more around the house. Even after 2 decades, he looked at me with so much desire, something any woman would cherish. Yet mentally, I just wasn't present. At the time, I attributed it to early menopause. Intimacy dwindled to 2 or 3 times a month. I was done after one time, while he craved more, but I refused even the idea of couples counseling. That's when selfishness began to take over. A new manager at work, slightly younger and attractive, started showing interest in me shortly after my birthday. Initially, I ignored him, but that changed into casual conversations. He flirted, and I made a point of showing him my wedding ring. After 2 months of persistent flirting, I finally flirted back. This led to sharing details about my life, and I found myself thinking about him more often. It started as an emotional affair, though I didn't recognize it at the time. My husband sensed something was off, and one evening, a heated argument broke out. It began because he tried to kiss me, and I instinctively pulled back with a look of disgust, not directed at him but because I had been thinking about the other man. That's what I told myself, at least. A week later, I met the new manager at a cafe with the intention of ending whatever was happening. But before I could speak, he kissed me, and my mind went blank. That was the start of a 6-month affair. During the 6 months of the affair, I did things with him that my ex-husband had always wanted but I had refused. I was eager, always in the mood, and far more willing because it felt new and exciting. Meanwhile, with my husband, intimacy became less frequent. I started pushing him away, nitpicking small habits, and even belittling him. I am deeply ashamed of how I treated him. It wasn't until my brother visited and mentioned that my husband had confided in him about feeling depressed and considering separation that I realized what I was doing. He told my brother that he felt I no longer loved him and that he was falling out of love with me. Those words snapped me out of it. Determined to save my marriage, I ended the affair immediately, quit my job, and resolved to make my husband feel loved and wanted again. I was committed to being a better wife. However, my affair partner complicated things. He came to my house with a box of my office belongings that I had asked to be shipped. When he arrived, we ended up talking, and he wanted to know what went wrong. I explained that I needed to fix my marriage and told him to leave, but he insisted on one last encounter. Foolishly, I agreed. We ended up in the guest room. I don't know how much time passed before I heard a loud bang and turned to see my husband standing in the doorway. My affair partner flinched violently, and there was now a large hole in the wall. My husband's eyes were bloodshot, tears streaming down his face as his lips trembled with pain. My affair partner attempted to leave, but when he told my husband to step back if he knew what was good for him, my husband attacked him. I screamed and cried, begging my husband to stop. Out of desperation, I jumped on his back, but he flung me off, slamming me onto the floor. Everything became hazy, sounds muffled, and when I came to, my husband had my affair partner pinned to the floor while calling emergency services. I could only watch in shock. Blood and teeth littered the floor, and my affair partner's face was swollen and disfigured. When the police arrived, my husband calmly placed the phone on the floor, dropped to his knees, and surrendered. The paramedics rushed my affair partner to the hospital. At the hospital, my life unraveled completely. My father looked at me with disappointment, my brother yelled, crushed and furious, asking how I could do this to my husband. My mother consoled me, which only made my father angrier. My husband's family was livid, his sisters threatened me, and his parents looked as though they wanted me gone for good. When I tried to approach my children, they refused to speak to me. My sons wouldn't even look at me, and my affair partner's injuries required reconstructive surgery to repair his shattered face. I later discovered he had lied to me about being single, he was married. His wife attacked me at the hospital when she learned of the affair. The discovery that my affair partner was married only deepened my guilt. He had never worn a ring or mentioned a wife, and now his actions had destroyed 2 families. His wife, overwhelmed by betrayal, filed for divorce and even sued me for alienation of affection. In the months leading up to the trial, everything fell apart. My ex-husband filed for divorce. My eldest son moved out, refusing to have any contact with me, while my other son became withdrawn and isolated. My twin daughters, devastated and angry, rebelled against me constantly. My former sisters-in-law confronted me in public, shouting insults and even physically attacking me at a grocery store. My ex-husband's mother spat in my face when I tried to apologize, her eyes filled with unrelenting hatred. I quickly ran out of savings and struggled to find work, as my former employer faced bad publicity due to the scandal. Unable to secure another job in accounting, I had to settle for seasonal retail work and part-time roles during tax season. I came dangerously close to losing the house. Every day became a battle to hold back tears, and I often broke down crying in the shower, overwhelmed by shame and regret. My attempts to reach out to my ex-husband were met with rejection. He refused to see me, and every letter I sent him was returned unopened. My parents' marriage also suffered, my mother defended me, while my father refused to forgive what I had done. My brother completely cut me off, furious over how I had betrayed someone he considered a brother. Even lifelong friends were divided, with many choosing to sever ties with me. At the trial, my ex-husband's testimony was soul-crushing. He recounted how he had planned to surprise me with a romantic weekend trip to the Catskills, only to come home and find me in bed with another man. His voice cracked as he described the pain and betrayal he felt. Listening to the recording of his call to emergency services was unbearable, his sobs and trembling voice revealed the depth of his anguish. When the court reviewed the evidence of my affair partner's injuries, it was devastating. The images of his shattered cheekbones, fractured eye socket, and destroyed jaw turned my stomach. My ex-husband's attack had left bone fragments too small to piece together, requiring extensive reconstructive surgery. The severity of the injuries resulted in a felony charge, and my ex-husband was sentenced to 7 years in prison. The sentencing sent shockwaves through our family. My sons protested loudly in court, devastated by their father's punishment. My daughters wept uncontrollably, and his family erupted into grief and outrage. The weight of everything I had caused was unbearable. The first 3 months after the trial were a nightmare. My ex-husband's sisters continued to harass me, and his parents disowned me entirely. My own family was torn apart, my father refused to speak to me, and my brother's anger was unrelenting. My children became distant, retreating into themselves, and I felt utterly alone. I tried to reach out to my ex-husband multiple times, hoping he would allow me to visit him in prison, but every request was denied. Letters continued to be returned, leaving me in a state of despair. My brother, who worked in the same correctional facility where my ex-husband was held, ensured that he was safe and in protective custody. However, his visits to my ex only deepened his resentment toward me. When they had their first child, it led to them being asked to leave. My mother kept me informed about what was happening in their lives, but my father continued to ignore my existence. Earlier this year, in early May, my kids brought joy to my life as my son unexpectedly returned home. I didn't know the reason for their return, nor did I care, all that mattered was their presence. For 4 months, my children stayed around, giving me a rare opportunity to apologize and show how deeply sorry I was for my past mistakes. Despite my efforts, I was often met with silence or indifference, but slowly, they began speaking to me again. Those moments of conversation filled me with immense joy, as I learned about their lives. My eldest had been in a relationship for over a year, my second-born was excelling as part of their college track team, and even my daughter started engaging with me once more. Witnessing them laugh, joke, and share meals together intensified my self-loathing for what I had done to them. I missed those family moments dearly. By late August, I was eagerly looking forward to celebrating the twins' senior year of high school, which coincided with their 18th birthday. I was enthusiastic about planning their birthday party, but my daughters requested that we hold it on another day. Their request confused me, as I thought we were finally mending our relationship. When I asked them for an explanation, one of them simply said, "Because Dad is throwing us a party, and I don't want you near him." That comment hit me like a bolt of lightning. Shocked, I asked when their father had been released, and they revealed that he had been out since late April due to good behavior. Tears streamed down my face as the realization struck me, they weren't around more because we were healing, they were around because their father was back in their lives. Their happiness and cheerfulness stemmed from having him back, not from any progress I had made with them. Desperate for answers, I asked where he was staying, and they told me he was living with my brother. I tried calling him, needing to have a conversation, but he refused to speak to me. Left with no other option, I went to my brother's house, carrying the stack of letters I had written and sent to him over the years. Through a crack in the door, I saw him briefly and shouted his name, but my brother asked me to leave. Before walking away, I handed over the letters, hoping he would read them. As I reached my car, I heard his voice call out. Turning around, I saw him walking toward me. Overcome with emotion, I began crying and rushed to hug him, but he coldly handed back the letters and said, "You forgot this." Tears blurred my vision as I watched him walk away. I begged and pleaded with him to talk to me, but he ignored my cries and returned inside. My children stood at the door, their expressions void of love, gazing at me with disappointment. In that moment, I realized that they were merely tolerating me. Yet, despite everything, I still yearn to fix what's broken. I want to tell him how selfish I was, how deeply I regret my actions, and how much I miss him. I want to apologize for destroying everything we once had. But for now, I keep pushing through my days, clinging to the faint hope of reconciliation. My mother informed me recently that my almost partner's ex-wife had started visiting my ex 2 years ago and continues to see him. Frankly, I don't care about her presence. What I care about is earning his forgiveness and getting him to speak to me. I long for him to look at me the way he used to stand by my side, and to reunite as a family with our children. Even though I know I don't deserve it, I dream of a miracle where we become one again, even if it can never be the same as it was before. I was selfish. And I wish I could undo it all. Second story. This is a response to my mother's post. I've worked hard to keep my past hidden. My college friends have no idea about my father's time in prison, and I prefer it that way. But walking around campus and overhearing people discussing a post about my family unearthed a wave of emotions I've tried to bury. Upon investigating further, I discovered enough details to confirm that the post was about us, and it enraged me. I called my mother to confront her, and our conversation quickly spiraled into an argument. Later, I visited my father and told him about it, which also led to a tense exchange. Despite everything, I believe my father is a good man. Even during that argument, he scolded me for disrespecting my mother, urging me to show her respect regardless of my feelings toward her. My father faced countless challenges in his life and always reminded us to appreciate the opportunities we had, particularly growing up in a safer environment than he did. He often spoke about the hardships of his youth in the South Bronx, where pursuing education made him a target. At just 15, my dad lost his father to cancer and had to take on the role of a surrogate parent to his two younger sisters. Without life insurance, he juggled attending school and working to help with rent and food. Thankfully, his mother remarried a kind man, and they moved to upstate New York, offering him a chance at a better life. Despite everything, I still try to keep my history under wraps. My college friends have no idea about my father's past, especially the time he spent in prison, and I'm not interested in opening up about it to them. But then, one day, I overheard a conversation on campus. People were talking about a particular post, and I knew instantly it was about my family. The flood of emotions I had been trying to bury rushed to the surface. I couldn't ignore it, so I decided to dig deeper, and I found enough details to confirm it was, indeed, about us. I was furious. I immediately called my mother to confront her, but her reaction only made things worse, and an argument broke out. Around the same time, I visited my dad. I thought maybe confessing to him would help ease the tension, but it led to a confrontation too. Despite everything that happened, though, I still believe my dad is a good man. He scolded me for disrespecting my mother, even though I didn't think she deserved it. He always told me that, no matter what, respect for your parents, especially your mother, is important. It's hard, though, to respect someone like her, someone who shattered so much of our family's trust. My father had endured so much in his life. He often reminded me that, growing up in the South Bronx, it wasn't easy to pursue education and dreams that weren't aligned with the neighborhood's expectations. The very act of trying to better himself, like going to college, made him a target. When he was 15, his own father died from cancer, and my dad was suddenly the head of the household. He had to take care of his younger sisters, all while working hard to contribute to rent and food. He was able to do this while continuing his education, something that wasn't easy but was necessary for him and his sister's survival. It was fortunate for my dad that his mother remarried a good man, and they moved upstate for a better life. My father always told me how he had to fight for his place in this world. Back in the 90s, my dad's unique sense of style, including baggy clothes and a Puerto Rican flag shirt, led to teasing from his friends. But instead of backing down, he fought back and earned their respect. He didn't walk away. Instead, he helped one of them skip school, shared a 40-ounce beer, and talked things out. This unexpected friendship led him to meet my mother. They attended the same college, and by the end of their first year, they were married. During my childhood, my parents were affectionate with each other. They'd hold hands, kiss, and show their love for each other openly, even when things weren't perfect. But even though my dad had a teenage crush on my mom and adored her, he never put her on a pedestal. He would tell me that women won't respect a man who does that. He taught me that a marriage works best when both partners treat each other as equals, as best friends and confidants. This belief came from his father and stepfather, both of whom had similar views about marriage. Physically, my dad was a big man, standing 5 feet 11 inches and weighing 260 pounds, but he was always active, joking around and keeping things light, even if his weight made it harder. I remember how much I appreciated the little things he did for my mom. He would serenade her, buy her flowers for no reason, and write her love notes. He wasn't just the provider and protector, he was also the one who made her feel loved every single day. He defended her honor and often expressed how beautiful she was to him. My dad showed me what it meant to be a man, a husband, and a father. He didn't let things slide when it came to respecting others and standing up for what was right. When my uncle was going through a rough time, my dad stood by him, even when others had given up. My grandfather once said, "My son knocked the stupid out of him," meaning that my dad helped my uncle become the man he was supposed to be. That phrase always made me laugh, but it also made me proud of my dad. He had the ability to inspire people to be better. Before my mother's affair, my parents had what seemed like the ideal marriage. My mom loved my dad, and he was always there for her. But then she destroyed it. I remember the months when my mom would talk down to him, and he would push back, but always with restraint. My dad had a college education and a successful career as a financial advisor, yet he would switch from calm to assertive when necessary, especially when defending our family's honor. Still, no matter what, he continued to try to fix things with her. He bought her flowers, took her out for dinners, and even tried to reignite their passion with dance. But none of it worked. She was in her own world, and he was increasingly treated poorly. We all witnessed it, especially my younger siblings, and the toll it took on us was evident. Yet, my dad always reassured us that things would work out. He blamed her stress at work, especially when she quit her job. He thought it was the root of the problem. I genuinely believed it too, until everything came crashing down with his arrest. Do you know how embarrassing it was for me when the whole school found out my dad had been arrested? He had been arrested because my mom had cheated on him. I couldn't even look at her after that. I stayed at my grandma's house, unable to face the situation. When I visited my dad, he couldn't look me in the eyes. He felt like he had failed as a man, as a husband. He kept repeating that a responsible man would never let something like this happen, and that's when I realized how much he had been hurt. I tried to tell him he wasn't a failure, but he wouldn't listen. And then, my mother had the audacity to ask us for forgiveness. For the first time in my life, I felt anger so deep that I wanted to hurt her. We were all in pain, and yet, she wanted us to forgive her. Sitting through that trial, listening to the 25-minute call where my father cried, begging the operator for help, was the worst experience of my life. I'll never forget hearing him, the man who would have done anything for her, sobbing over the love of his life betraying him. I know my mother tried to act as a character witness for my dad during the trial, but it only made things worse. We all begged her not to do it, but she did it anyway. Her cross-examination, where she revealed how long she had been seeing the other man, sealed the deal. We lost him, and in hindsight, if we had a proper lawyer, things might have turned out differently. That betrayal triggered anger issues in me, and my brother turned to alcohol, while one of my twin sisters became suicidal. But my mom didn't notice. She was only focused on trying to fix things with Dad. As the years passed, my dad faced even more hardship. He was stabbed, and it nearly broke me. I had just seen him that day, cracking jokes, making light of his prison body. I was halfway back to school when I got the call, and I almost crashed my car. It was one of those moments where the world stops, and nothing makes sense anymore. I didn't tell anyone, but I sat outside the man's apartment who hurt my dad, wanting to confront him. When I saw him walking with a cane, I remembered what my dad had always told me about forgiveness and walked away. As time moved on, Grandma passed away, and then Grandpa died from broken heart syndrome. Dad couldn't attend either funeral, but he made sure to be there for his sisters when they got married. The damage my mom caused was irreversible. Yet, she kept asking us for forgiveness, to give her another chance, but it never felt like she was truly giving us room to heal. She just wanted us to move on as if nothing had happened. All I see is someone trying to make herself feel better without considering the pain she caused. Dad told us to start talking to her again, saying she was a good mother, so we did. For a while, it made her happy. I remembered what it was like to not hate her. But then the truth came out. My dad had been seeing someone else for years after his release. They'd been spending time together, and it hurt him to see my mom again. The sight of her made him sick. I guess he was right. We lost our family long before she ever realized what she had done.